There's something unique about people who were teenagers in the 1970s. Maybe it is how they can be alone with their ideas without feeling worried. Or maybe it is that firm sense of identity that comes from finding out who you were without the web giving you answers. There's a reason this group handles life in a different way, and it has nothing to do with good fortune. And believe me, by the end of this video, you are going to see why being a teen in that decade made some of the most confident people on Earth. Here is what liberty truly looked like. You were 15 years old, and you want a vehicle. Not your parents' car, your car. So you find a job. You work the summer at the fuel station, the grocery shop, the fast food place. You work after school. You work on weekends. You save every cent. And here's the thing. You were not rare. In 1978, almost 60% of teenagers had work. For boys, it was over 70%. Not for college money, not for a resume, for one thing, buying your own set of wheels. Then, one Saturday, you hand over $400 cash for an old Dodge Dart with 80,000 miles on it. It leaks oil. The radio only plays AM stations. The passenger door does not open from the inside, but it is yours. You earned it. And in that second, you understood something that would stay with you forever. You can make things happen for yourself. That car changed everything. Suddenly, you could go anywhere. Friday nights, you would drive down Main Street with loud music playing from the speakers. After the '73 oil crisis, $2 would not fill the tank anymore. But you didn't care. You had saved for this. You had earned this. When your parents said, "Be home by midnight," that was the agreement. What you did until then was your own business. No GPS tracker, no location apps, no text check-ins. Just you, your car, and the open road. You would spend whole nights at the drive-in, at the burger place, parked at the lake. When plans changed, you had to actually go find your friends, which meant knowing which spots to check, looking at the parking lots, understanding the unwritten map of where everyone spent time. You didn't have parents watching your every move. You had the opposite of protective parents. You had find-it-yourself parents. You know, where you walk in expecting someone to guide you, but there is nobody around. You walk around looking for an adult, any adult, and finally, you just figure it out yourself. That was parenting in the '70s. And if you did get hurt, be tough. Keep going. Or the classic, do not get blood on my nice carpet. This sounds harsh by today's rules, but it created something special. Teenagers who believed they could manage things, who didn't need to be saved, who knew deep inside that they could work for what they wanted and actually get it. Now, imagine you are driving through town on a Saturday night and you see your ex's car at the burger place. You learned to read social moments instantly. You knew which hangout spots were safe ground and which ones belonged to specific groups. You could tell from across a parking lot whether a party was going to be trouble or fun. But the real magic? The mall. In the '70s, the mall was not just shopping, it was the social center of teenage life. You would meet up with your friends, walk around the food area, check out the newest styles, half the time just to try on things you had no plan of buying. And then there was the arcade. The bright lights, the loud sounds, Pac-Man, pinball, Space Invaders. Getting a high score felt like total glory. If you had a few coins, you were set for the day. You learned who stayed calm under pressure, who was a bad loser, who would give you their last coin. The arcade was a social lab disguised as games. This was not wasting time. This was social skills in action. When you are managing teenage bonds without parents watching every talk, you develop a sharp sense of how people act. You learn to judge situations on your own, make fast choices about where you fit in, and read people's true feelings beneath what they were saying. What experts call high social thinking sounds smart, but you were just learning to survive high school, and it made you observant in ways modern teenagers, whose parents follow them on social media and watch their every move, simply are not. And then there was dating. If you think asking someone out today is scary, imagine this. You had to call her house on the family phone, which meant her dad might answer. "Hello, Mr. Johnson, this is Mike. Is Jennifer there?" And then you would wait, heart beating fast, while he decided whether to give her the phone or ask you questions about your life, your family, your father's job. Some dads made you come inside and sit in the room for a full talk before you could take their daughter anywhere. If you made it past the father, you had rules. No calls after 9 p.m., talks limited to 10 minutes because the whole family used one phone line. And if her little brother picked up the other phone to listen, you just had to deal with it. But let's say she said yes. Now you had to show up at her door, not honk from the street. That was seen as very rude. You walked up, rang the bell, made small talk with her parents, and then finally you could leave together in your car alone. Friday night, you would take her to the drive-in. You know the one, rows of cars facing that giant screen, the speaker hanging on your window, the smell of popcorn coming from the food stand.
And yes, the drive-in had its own rules. Cars parked with space between them, workers with flashlights walking around. Some parents would ask their kids about the movie story when they got home just to be sure they had actually been watching. When things got serious, there were signs. The boy would give his girlfriend his school ring wrapped in string so it would fit her smaller finger. She would wear his team jacket. ID bands were signs of going steady. These were not just items. They were public signs seen by everyone at school that you belonged to each other. And breaking up, that meant a formal return of these items, often through friends to avoid the discomfort. There was no changing your status online, no mean posts, no vague messages, just a ring and jacket handed back in the hall. And everyone knew. This was not just love, it was training in real-life social skills. You learned to read people, to stay true, to handle being turned down face-to-face, to understand that relationships needed work and being there, not just a list of texts. The people who dated in the 1970s learned that love needs showing up in person, at her front door, past her father, with a plan, and enough fuel money to get home by the time set. Fast forward to 3:30 on a Thursday afternoon. School is finished and you head right to your part-time job at the music shop, the pizza shop, or the fuel station. You clock in, deal with rude customers, handle the cash box, close the shop.
Your boss is not your parent's friend. Your coworkers are not chosen for you. This is real work, real pay, real duty. This was not resume building. This was growing up. Every shift, you proved you could show up, do the task, handle problems without calling your parents. That you were able, that you could manage adult places and adult rules. Something became fixed in these teenagers during those after-school jobs. When things went wrong, they did not run to their parents to fix it. They figured it out themselves. You messed up, you dealt with the result. You wanted something, you earned the money to buy it. This kind of self-reliance became part of who you were. But let us talk about those Friday nights when everyone was busy. You would call your best friend, actually call them on a home phone, hoping their parents did not answer, stretching that long curly wire halfway across the house for some privacy, until your mom pulled it back because she needed to make a call. Turns out neither of you had plans anyway, and that was okay. You would drive around with no goal, listening to the radio. You would end up at the diner, drinking a coffee for 2 hours. You would sit in someone's car in a quiet parking lot talking about everything and nothing until you saw it was 2 a.m. Nobody cared if you were bored. Nobody tried to amuse you. You just figured it out. You learned that empty time was not a problem. It was a chance. Modern teenagers treat free time like a sickness that needs fast medicine, with Netflix, Instagram, or TikTok. But you sat with it. You let it happen. And in that space, you found yourself. This ability for free time goes far beyond teenage boredom. These are people who can sit through a meal without checking their phones, who can drive for hours without needing a show, who can handle not knowing what is happening in everyone else's life every minute of the day. Here's what's amazing. Research shows that people who had regular times of free social time as teenagers have a stronger sense of identity and better control of feelings as adults. Those quiet nights taught your brain how to be happy with yourself. Which brings us to the basement party at someone's house whose parents were away. You know the one, the music playing loud rock bands, everyone packed into a space that was definitely too small, beer that someone's older brother bought, no social media proof of who was there or what happened, and yes, sometimes things went wrong. Someone drank too much, a fight began. Someone's ex showed up with someone new. But here's what happened. You learned through real life how to handle yourself in free social settings. You made your own rules for what was too far. You knew when a party was getting too wild and it was time to leave. You figured out how to get someone home when they had too much. You learned to manage drama or get out before it got bad. This was not being reckless. It was social learning happening in real time. While other groups might freeze when facing hard social moments, 1970s teenagers learned to judge and adapt. They understand group social ways naturally because they lived through every possible scene without parents coming in to manage it. Then came those nights when you just wanted to be alone. You would go to your bedroom, close the door, and that was your world. Posters covering every bit of the walls, famous stars and rock bands. Your music collection kept exactly how you wanted it. Your diary hidden under your bed where you wrote things you would never say out loud. That music collection was not just songs, it was who you were. You would spend hours at the record shop looking through bins, pulling out albums just to study the cover art, the inside notes, the way a band's artwork told you something about who you would be if you bought it. The worker behind the desk was not just a staff member.
He was a teacher who could tell you which music sounded better and which bands you needed to hear next. You would save up your money, walk out with one album, and that album would become part of you. You didn't skip through 10,000 songs, you committed to 40 minutes of music from start to end, reading every word in the notes while the record played. You could spend hours alone in that space, and it was not lonely. You would write poems, lyrics, letters you would never mail. You would think about everything, who you were, who you wanted to be, what it all meant. This was not isolation. This was building a personality. You learned that you could be alone with your thoughts and survive it, that you didn't need constant praise from others to know who you were, that being alone and being lonely were completely different things. The privacy forced on this group created something powerful, a solid inner sense of self. These are people who know who they are regardless of what others think, who don't need social media likes to feel real, who can sit with their own thoughts without worry. But that strong sense of self was tested often. Your first real heart pain, not a small crush, but the person you thought you would be with forever. You are lying on your bedroom floor listening to the same song over and over, and you feel like your chest is hurting. But here's the thing. You couldn't immediately attack your ex on social media, couldn't text 15 friends for instant support, couldn't look through their photos crying over who they were with now. You just felt it. You wrote angry letters you never sent. You cried into your pillow. You drove around at midnight with the windows down, feeling every bit of that pain. This was not emotional damage. This was emotional healing. You learned that heart pain would not kill you, that you could feel terrible emotions and come out the other side, that pain was short-term even when it felt like it would never end. What experts call mental strength, the ability to feel hard emotions without being broken by them. Was you surviving your first real heart pain? Those who were teenagers in the 1970s handle relationship problems differently as adults because they learned young that you can feel everything and still be okay. Now, let us think about what it felt like to wait for something you wanted. Really wait. You wanted concert tickets? You slept outside the music shop with your friends. You wanted to see your partner? You counted down the hours until you would see them at school. You wanted to know if they liked you back? You waited by the phone, hoping they would call. And then there was the joy of recording your favorite song off the radio onto a tape. You would hit record just in time, hoping the radio host did not talk over the start, hoping the station didn't cut to a commercial. You would listen to that tape over and over, and if you got a clean recording, no breaks, no cuts, that was a win. Those homemade tapes were not just music, they were trophies.
Every song you caught took you right back to the moment you first pressed record. This rhythm of wanting and getting was not something your parents taught you. It was just life, and it created something strong. The ability to want something a lot and hold that feeling. To understand that waiting was part of the fun, not a block to it. Modern teenagers have instant everything. Instant messages, instant access, instant rewards. But your brain learned a different way. That concert felt amazing specifically because you waited for it, saved for it, talked about it for weeks. That relationship felt strong because you could not text them every 5 minutes. That song meant more because you worked to catch it. And here is what experts have found. People who learn to wait for things as teenagers have more stable relationships, better job success, and higher life happiness as adults. The 1970s group got this training built into their teen years without even knowing it. But not everything you wanted worked out. Remember when you did not make the top team? When you were turned down by your first choice college? When the person you liked did not like you back? When you failed that big test? When you were not invited to the party everyone was talking about? Each time you felt that sting, that shame, that sense of failure. But here is what did not happen. There was no social media pile-on, no permanent digital record of your worst times, no parents calling the school to demand another try, no one asking if the rejection was fair. You failed, felt bad about it, and then moved on. This was not mean, it was reality teaching you how to be tough. Experts now talk about being anti-fragile, not just getting back up after hard times, but growing stronger because of it. For 1970s teenagers, this was not a new idea, it was just life. You learned that being told no was not the end of your story, that failure was a lesson, not who you are, that you could survive not getting what you wanted and come back better. While other groups might fall apart after setbacks, 1970s teenagers develop this inner voice that says, okay, what is next? They treat problems as short-term because they learned young that most things that feel bad eventually go away. And you needed that strength when managing teenage friendships. Picture the lunch table, the complex social levels, the changing groups, the small betrayals. No one was texting photos of private talks. No one was posting about drama. No one was counting likes to see their social worth. When someone said something about you behind your back, you heard it from someone else. When friends were fighting, you had to actually talk it through face to face. When you wanted to know if you were still friends with someone, you had to judge it from how they acted around you, not from whether they followed you online. This forced you to develop high social intelligence. You learned to read small looks, that tiny eye roll that meant your friend was mad even though they said they were fine. You could sense when someone was being fake versus real. You understood group ways naturally because you lived them in real time. You knew which friend you could trust with secrets and which one would tell them by Monday. You understood who was a real friend versus who just wanted to be seen with certain people. You learned when to fight for a friend and when to let it go. People think that teenagers without constant digital talk were more lonely. It is actually the opposite. These teenagers had to develop very deep social skills because they were managing everything face to face. They learned to read people, not profiles, to value depth over many friends, to build real closeness. And now, many years later, many of these 1970s teenagers look back and realize something. Those years of figuring it out on your own, of making mistakes without the web recording them forever, of forming who you are in private, those years made you who you are. You learned to trust yourself because you had to. You developed belief because no one was there to approve every choice. You became okay with who you were because you built that self in private without the constant pressure of showing who you were online. When you look at teenagers now, you see them struggling under the weight of constant being seen, instant feedback, and fake perfection. That mistakes are not disasters when they are not kept forever. That you need space to figure out who you are. Your teenage years were not perfect, but they gave you something very dear. The freedom to become yourself without a crowd, the space to make mistakes and learn from them, the time to build an identity that was truly yours. These people carry within them something that is becoming very rare in our connected world, a solid sense of self that comes from finding out who you were without constant talk. They are living proof that maybe, just maybe, the best teenage years are the ones spent away from a screen. They learn that you do not need a crowd to know who you are, that the deepest bonds happen face to face.